Hi there, welcome back to the archives. I wanted to do a quick book share before I return this to the library. Like I said, I shared before. I've been reading The Psychology of Money, um, timeless lessons on wealth, greed, and happiness by Morgan Housel. So I was reading this weekend. We had a long weekend here in Canada. It was Thanksgiving weekend, so I wanted to get this done because I have to return it today. Um, yeah, I'm glad I read this. Like I said, I wanted to read this before going into the new year. Um, Better understand, especially my own psychology and my thought patterns around money. It's been something I've attended other sessions that have helped me kind of unearth some of my own like financial trauma, or just resistance. I think Tatiana Tarot has done some meditations around money blocks, has shown me what some of my money blocks are. I think for me, a lot of it is growing around people who I saw with money, that I perceived them as being extremely greedy. Um, yeah, so I've associated wealth with and unhappiness. People who were deeply, deeply, deeply unhappy, but they had money to mask it, and so everybody thought they were doing well. But I've always, at least since I was a little kid, I've always kind of been able to see through certain things. And so I understood that even though a lot of people I saw with money were right and everybody wanted to be them, I also still saw an inability to be their authentic self, right? Um, they couldn't be true. I don't know. They didn't seem truly happy to me. It felt like they were using money to fill a void that couldn't be filled, right? Which explained the greed. They were just consuming so much, and a lot of it was like external validation, right? A lot of these people tend to care about their reputation, which we'll get into here. Gets into reputation, um, and I don't know. It just left a bad ick in my mouth. They wouldn't share money. I hate people who like wait for you to ask, right? They need you to beg them. Again, people can't read your mind, but I'm not talking about mind reading. I'm talking about there's a gender aspect of money as well that really annoyed me. I would see like powerful men making money. There would be accusations of how they got their money, and then I would see them just like watching their sisters like live in poverty. And I never understood that, especially as an African, where we're taught it takes a village to raise a kid. It takes a village, right? And I just saw like how individualistic money made people. They would either wait for their siblings or their friends or whoever to ask them, like beg them for money, and not that they wouldn't give it to them, right? But it's just, I don't know. I just saw that for me, money truly, I saw it as the root of all evil. Um, I'll never forget as a kid the first time a family member died since I came to Canada, on my father's side. Seeing my dad's dad die, and then hearing all of the drama, right? Because as a kid, Kong Kong San, I've always been a nosy kid, so I always had to listen to what the adults are saying. And it's just like whenever people die, I don't know about other cultures, but in Ghanaian culture, it's like you really see people's true colors when there's a death, right? Because a lot of it is financial. And so I think for me, I was just like, if that's what it's doing to you guys, I don't want it. But at the same time, for me, if anything, I was chasing the titles, the labels, right? I grew up, um, with a family, from stories I heard, so and so was a doctor, so and so was this, and on even just like my maternal side, I think all of my uncles had PhDs. My mom has five brothers. I'm pretty sure. I think all of them is either a doctor or a doctor of some sort. For me, it was like that was what I wanted to chase, right? I have an uncle who was an academic, and I saw him like basically starting to live his life at 40, and I was like, okay, well, people do wait until 40 to get married. People do wait until 40 to have kids, and it's okay to delay as long as you're pursuing something. I learned the word for it here was It was leverage, right? You're taking on debt to leverage yourself pretty much. So anyways, all to say is I've been thinking a lot, and especially in the last couple of years, I've been thinking about my money blocks, right? Because I definitely have money blocks. And I've done this thing where I self-sabotage so I won't get certain things subconsciously, not always consciously, but I think subconsciously, because I like money to me is an ick. Like the way I've seen it, I was just like it just to me it just makes people do demonic things. Um, and I've always like I said, since I was in grade two, after my first communion, I always thought I could see God. I was not see God. I always felt like God is watching me. And so as much as people might think I'm not Christian or she's a heathen and she does African spirituality, which again is all of their own anti-blackness, I really actually was really indoctrinated into the church. Um, and that to me that wasn't a bad thing growing up, right? After my second communion, I would turn my side tables into altars. I would put all my little plaques from my first communion. My rosary would be on there. So I've really took to the lessons. The homily is my favorite part of mass. Everybody's concerned about getting the host because they think the host is going to protect them, and which I think is because they low key they know that their behavior is not completely in accordance with the Lord, and so they feel like taking the host and drinking the wine is going to wash them of their iniquities. Whereas I'm like, I'm trying not to build up iniquities so I can just focus on the homily. What is the sermon, right? The lessons, the storytelling. That has always been my favorite part of church. Um, but this book made me realize the value of saving. Um, Although what I would say to this is, I'm going to start with the positives, but I would say I would love more books on financial literacy to actually speak to poor people because I feel like people who often talk about financial literacy are talking to other rich people. And then they will spend their time looking down and judging poor people for not being able to save. So then write a book for poor people and tell them how to save. If somebody is only bringing in like $320 every single month in this economy, tell that person how to save. How do you save with $300 a month? I think that's what, right? I think that to me would be a good financial educator. You're getting poor people to actually save because when you don't have that extra dollar, what are you going to save for? And what rainy day? You don't even know if you're going to live to see the tomorrow, right? And so you learn to really live in the moment. Whereas I think when you have disposable income, you could think about the future. Before I got my PhD, and I had disposable income when I was working full time and going to school part time and trying to run a side hustle business and then trying to launch another business. When I was in that grind culture, it was easy for me to save for RSPs. I was saving for RSPs. But then what happened? I started my PhD. I didn't have the money. I had to pull that money out to help pay tuition. Right? Same thing with my master's. I was saving money, putting money aside, and then I started to run a business and I realized I have to fund this business myself. I have to pay for these clothes in order to sell them. I have to pay for this person and this flight to get to this place to get. I had to fund all of that myself. I was lucky enough that I had an uncle. Again, going back to people who I saw do money well. For me, I would say Uncle Akuto was one of those few people who was like, would give money and then I would be able to make clothes, right? Auntie Nana, I got a lot of my stuff. That's how Mina Daniel started. Was in 2008, I went to Ghana. Me and Keisha went to Ghana. And thank God, I'm really grateful for Uncle Dike and Uncle Akoto, but my Uncle Akoto specifically, right? Those are one of the few examples I saw of a politician who was generous. Again, I think he could have probably had better boundaries with money. Um, but that's the type of person I was, and I've been thinking a lot about that in watching this documentary, these different stories of 36 warriors, queens, and intellectuals. I keep hearing she was her daughter's favorite, and seeing how what women do when their fathers invest in them. If I had a father who invested in me financially, I would be in a completely different place because the 3 months I was in Ghana, where my uncle was able to invest in me, I took that money and obviously I made clothes for myself, but I turned that into a business, right? And so I think sometimes when we talk about money, there's just it still comes from a place of privilege and speaking to privileged people, and then still attacking poor people. Show that person again. That person that's under the poverty rate, that person that's only bringing in 12 to 15,000 K a year. How do they save money, right? And again, you have to the money has to come in to save, and then even when you're saving, like, which is what I really appreciate about this book, you don't know what the future brings. Nobody can predict the future, right? Which is why you save. And so I understood that, and I saw, like, in the past, you're right, when I was able to save money, I had money to fund my own business at one point. That robbed me dry. Right? When I was able to save money with my RSPs, I did have money on a rainy day when I couldn't afford tuition or rent, and I was able to pull that out. I think in retrospect, from reading this book, I would have learned not to touch that RSP money, right? I would have, and I think that's what I loved about this book is the storytelling that made it relatable. Oh, if I hadn't touched my RSPs, I could have let it grow. That's compounding. Okay, you're right. Then because I was saving money. It's just I ended up having to take it out, which is what a lot of people do. And he explains the psychology behind that, right? When things are going wrong, people start to panic, and then rather than leaving the money to just continue growing, which is what Warren Buffett did. He talked about how Warren Buffett has been saving since he was 10 years old, right? That, and he's like, what, 90 something? That's over 4 decades. He talked about over 4 decades, but it's longer at this point. This came out in 2020, I believe. Right? Same with, he talks about a janitor who, once the janitor died, all of a sudden people knew that the janitor was a millionaire and became a philanthropist because he left like $6 million to charity. I think he had $8 million. He gave 2 million to his kids and left 6 million to charity. Which again, that also rubs me the wrong way. How come your own children only got 2 million and 6 million went to charity? People think that's a good thing, but I think that's also like, I've lived with that. People who would rather give money to other people to look like a good person while their family is struggling. That is where my money mood comes from. And a lot of people do that. They feel like they don't have a responsibility to their kids or their immediate family, but they will pour money out to everybody around them so the community thinks, oh, they have wealth, oh, they're generous. Meanwhile, their children are struggling, their wives are struggling, their sisters are struggling, but they're philanthropists because that church got $6 million. I don't know. To me, that's not also a good positive story. I think the author thinks it is, and it is. This janitor who was making an average income died a millionaire, $8 million that he was able to save. That's a beautiful story. I'm just also interested in, like, again, a lot of rich people do stuff so people make them look good, but like, what did their actual family look like? That to me is somebody who's wealthy. Oh, you're investing in your children. You're investing in your wife. Oh, they're not struggling. You're not building all of these homes while they're getting evicted. They're going to the food bank. They're on the street. You have all of these 5, 6, 7 homes, and your daughter is homeless on the street. But people think you're rich and you're generous. You can't even invest in your own daughter. That to me is where a lot of my money wounds come from, and I see it still. So I would say this book taught me the importance of compounding and the importance of saving, right? Even if it's just $1 a day, even if it's just $1 a day, right? That's $365 at the end of every year. But even still, like, over 40 years, I think it would have been like almost 15 grand that I would have been able to put away. I was calculating it. If I had saved $1 for every year, for every day, excuse me, of my life, I still would only have saved 15, roughly less than 15K at this point, if it wasn't compounding with interest, right? So, I want to see more talk, like, actually speak to poor people. That person who's bringing in, like I am, that, 300, like, how do you stretch $320 in a month? Um, right? That person in ODSP who's only getting $1,400, $1,200 a month, how do they save up for a rainy day when they're not even allowed to even make any more money than that. Otherwise, they lose that, right? So it's like you get put in this catch-22 bind where if you go and just like I saw a video recently, and I was going to share that coming up, where a woman basically took her stamp money, baked some things for a bake sale. The government surveillanced her, saw that she had, I don't remember whose post it was. Somebody online just posted it. I shared it on my Facebook. The government saw that she used her stamp benefits to basically fund a business. And now she's getting 10 years. Rather than this book would say that's what you celebrate, right? They celebrate that. I think it was talking about a railroad company, somebody who owns a rail Vanderbilt. Cornelius Vanderbilt had just finished a series of business deals to expand his railroad empire. One of his business advisors leaned in to tell Vanderbilt that every transaction he agreed to broke the law. "Oh my God, John," said Vanderbilt, "you don't suppose you can run a railroad in accordance with the statute of the state of New York, do you?" So when there's a white man hustling to build his railroad company and breaking the law, that, wow. The author literally said, my first thought when reading this was that attitude is why he was so successful. But again, a black woman does that same attitude of like, let me take a dollar and let me take a penny and turn it into a dollar. Let me use this, what I have, what I'm working with to build something better for myself. She gets in prison. I wish white financial advisors just talked about that. I need you guys to talk about that reality. No one wants to talk about race because it's like, but all of this book was deeply intertwined with race, right? Because it's not the same. It's not the same. You can look at that and be like, that's exactly the attitude that gets you wealthy. Now let me try that. Oh, Dorothy's running the system and she's running game on the system and it's not the same. So those are some of the thoughts. I really like the part here where they talk about luck and risk. I appreciated the conversation of luck because he's right. A lot of people get offended if you tell them that they were successful because of luck. Now it's like, oh, I worked hard for this. Luck is what we call privilege. And I think that maybe we need to start using the word luck so that white people don't get offended when they hear privilege. But luck is essentially the same thing. There's something that is attributed to you. There's something that is attributed to your success that had nothing to do with you. That's privilege. Maybe that's the color of your skin. Maybe that's a family you grew up in. Maybe it's that you all of a sudden were able to talk to this person at this networking event who put you on. Regardless, there is an element of luck that comes with success that people don't want to talk about. And I love that the author talked about that. He talked about Bill Gates. When Bill Gates was growing up, apparently he was 13 years old in 1968, and one of his high school was one of the few schools that got a computer. I think they asked for he went to Lakeside something or another in grade 8, so he had access to a computer, and Gates and his friend something Allen Paul Allen were obsessed with it, and so Bill Gates got a head start in computers. They talked about like what would it be like to um, own a Fortune 500 company one day, and they were like, maybe I could do it. So you could see like the prophetic way in which they were doing it, right? So a little quick math. This is on page 26. In 1968, there were roughly 303 million high school age people in the world, according to the UN. About 18 million of them lived in the United States. About 270,000 of them lived in Washington State, which is where Bill Gates lived. Over a little 100,000 of them lived in Seattle area. Only 300 of them attended Lakeside School. Start with 303 million, end with 300. And so he's talking about 1 in a million high school age students attended the high school that had the combination of cash and foresight to buy a computer. Bill Gates happened to be one of them, and he took that off and ran. And then I like the example. I love that the author draws a parallel between risk. Kent Evans. So apparently Kent Evans was part of the Three Musketeers, Bill Gates, Paul Allen, and there was a third, Kent Evans. All three of them loved computers. Kent Evans probably would have been part of the trio to help launch Microsoft. What happens? He was apparently more brilliant than both of them. He was totally skilled, had the business acumen, was very ambitious. Kent walked around with a briefcase. Like, he probably would have been more successful than all of them. What happened? He went on a mountaineering excursion and basically was killed. Kent died in a mountaineering accident before he graduated high school. He didn't even get to graduate high school, right? Every year, there are around 3 dozen mountaineering deaths in the United States. The odds of being killed on a mountain in a high school are roughly 1 in a million. Bill Gates experienced 1 in a million luck by ending up at Lakeside. Kent Evan experienced 1 in a million risk by never getting to finish what he and Gates set out to achieve. The same force, the same magnitude, working in opposite directions. And so basically, he says, like, luck and risk are both the reality that every outcome in life is guided by forces other than individual effort. They are so similar that you can't believe in one without equally respecting the other. They both happen because the world is too complex to allow 100% of your actions to dictate 100% of your outcomes. They are driven by the same thing. You are one person in a game with 7 billion people, and infinite moving parts. The accidental impact of actions outside of your control can be more consequential than the ones you consciously take. So I really appreciated that. Um, yeah, and so it just basically goes through each chapter, just shares different anecdotes and lessons from people. It says, when judging others, attributing success to luck makes you look jealous and mean, even if you know it exists. And when judging yourself, attributing to success to luck can be too demoralizing to accept. So with somebody else, they got lucky, right? So and so got lucky. With me, it was because of hard work. And so that is psychology. That's absolutely psychology. That's the mind and the way the brain works. Um, yeah, I just really enjoyed a lot of realness, right? The conversation about um, how we don't. The cover of Forbes on page 30 says the cover of Forbes magazine does not celebrate poor investors who made good decisions, but happen to experience the unfortunate side of risk, right? Um, but it almost certainly celebrates rich investors who made okay or even reckless decisions and happen to get lucky. You could do everything right and then have a streak of misfortune. No one cares. But you could do things subpar, mediocre, which is what we often accuse white people of doing. Just mediocre, completely mediocre. All of the success. You're like, okay. Um, so I like that they got into this, honestly. One more thing I wanted to share was I like the letter that he wrote to his son. I really appreciate the letter. It said, after my son was born, I wrote him a letter that said in part, some people are born into families that encourage education, others are against it. Some are born into flourishing economies, encouraging of entrepreneurship, others are born into war and destitution. I want you to be successful. I want you to earn it. But realize that not all success is due to hard work, and not all poverty is due to laziness. Keep that in mind when judging people, including yourself. I really appreciated that, especially hearing that come from a white man, because a lot of people will just be like, "You're lazy," and "I made it because I worked hard," and they don't attribute anything to privilege, no luck, no nothing. It's just always, "I'm self-made." You hear so and so self-made millionaire, so and so self-made. A little humility, a little humility. So he talks about humility. I really appreciated that. So those are some of the lessons. Let me see if there's any more. There was a section I wanted to find here. It talked about the Madoffs and the Guptas, like people who were greedy, right? People who had enough, but they just wanted more, and then that got them into trouble because they got into fraud. Right, Gupta and Madoff, for instance, like they had enough. And that's a question. Like you had millions already. Why did you need to keep doing that? And you see that right now. People have enough, but they keep doing the most like especially right now with all of these wars and all of these genocides, and you see what people make money off of, and they're completely content. The pandemic made people wealthier than ever before, right? And so you're just like, how do you, it's really hard to rectify money when you see how people just get loaded off of other people's suffering. And I wish that had come, I think he kind of tried to get to that. But in order to get wealth, somebody has to be completely destitute. That's how capitalism works. Which is why people, every man for themselves. It's a dog eat dog world, right? Because people understand the more I get, the less I have to give you, right? And you're seeing it right now in the United States of America with Medicaid. The less I give my billionaire friends, the more I give my billionaire friends, the less I can give you poor people. Sorry. It's just like, wait, but your billionaire friends are billionaires. They're literally billionaires. They're good. You're like, well, you should just work a little harder and save. Okay. Okay. The last point I touch on here is he was talking about Rajat Gupta, who again basically got caught stealing, went to prison, and when he came out of prison, it says after he was released from prison, Rajat Gupta told the New York Times he had learned a lesson. Don't get too attached to anything, your reputation, your accomplishments, or any of it. I think about it now. What does it matter? Okay, this thing unjustly destroyed my reputation. It's only troubling if I am attached to my reputation. And I was thinking Gupta, it reminded me, for some reason, I was thinking of, I can't think of his name right now. Who's the spiritual guru, the Indian spiritual guru? I can't think of his name right now. But I was like, it reminded me of, I was thinking about Hinduism and attachment and Buddhism, and that response made sense to me. But it did not make sense to the author. The author was not buying it. Morgan was not buying it. Morgan said, it seems like the worst possible takeaway from his experience. And what I imagine is a comforting self justification of a man who desperately wants his reputation back, but knows it's gone. Reputation is invaluable. This again is where it's still, to me, in my humble opinion, it's still a very white man construct. It assumes you even have a reputation in the first place. For people who, just because of your proximity to a particular group, you just already might have a bad reputation. Again, this pastor that I saw that was like black people can't do black people things because black people are immoral and they're heathens and they're bad. You already, by virtue of being black, have a bad reputation. There are stereotypes already out on you. There's already an active smear campaign against black people before you even born into black skin. And so you really do learn to not care about reputation because once you see that a lot of people's reputation is bullshit, and I've done a post on this reputation versus character. I actually don't care about reputation because a lot of people who care about their reputation work very hard, which is it to me it's like a very white thing. You can have the best reputation and be trash behind the scenes. Let go of all of it. People have the worst characters have the best reputations. Some of the people with the best characters have the worst reputations. So again, I wish that there was a nuance to that because those who care about reputations will do the dirtiest things to keep that reputation. And they have that reputation because they worked really, really hard to control everything. You can't speak the truth about them. You can't because now it goes against their reputation, which has a lot to do with shame. This is a conversation of shame. And what Gupta is saying is, I learned the hard way, but I had to learn to succumb to that. I had to let that shame go because there are people whose lives are destroyed off of a rumor or propaganda. Look at everything we're seeing right now with Palestinians, the way in which there's active propaganda. They're all terrorists. There's no good Palestinian. They're all, right? What do you do with that reputation? Simply because you're Palestinian? Simply because you're Arab and Muslim? Now people don't want to hire you. Because of your name, you can't get a job. So again, people who care about reputation, usually they could do that because they don't have to worry about the reputation because they're working really, really hard to make sure they have a good reputation. They're terrified of losing their reputation. You got to let some of that go. And I think the author would disagree. But again, the reason why reputation is important is because that's what gets you paid. I shared this in my other blog on reputation character. People care so much about the reputation because they know that is how you make the money. But again, look at somebody like Donald Trump. Terrible reputation. Talking about grabbing pussies, convicted. He's making more money now than ever. With a badass reputation like that, look at all the money he's making. So again, I think this is like, it doesn't matter. The video I posted with uh, the black woman who used her stamp benefits, the creator juxtaposed it with Gisele Bundchen. Remember Tom Brady's ex-wife? Gisele was putting on, she was, people would, instead of using all her flight money, she would buy cheaper flight. The difference, keep that and save that money. Nobody was like, oh, Gisele is breaking the system and Gisele is using the system and Gisele was a hustler. Oh, that's how Gisele got it, because she was scamming the system. We give all of these tax breaks. We save all of these banks. We save all of these billionaires. Nobody, that is okay. But now let a poor person scam the system to also make a hustle. Now they go to jail. They can't do it. Well, because again, there's a race, there's a race and class issue here that financial gurus don't necessarily always want to talk about, right? Because you talking about that is why you're poor. Maybe you didn't talk about race so much, you'd be able to. Well, yeah, that's exactly the whole point. That's called dissent. If you can't make money because you're talking about critical issues that matter to this world, that's not because you can't save and you're broke. That's because you're being withheld. Again, going back to all the last 2 years, even not the last 2 years, the last decade, 20, 80 plus years, people who've spoken out against Israel, now you lose a lot of opportunities because you're seen as being anti-Semitic. Well, you should not have spoken out against Israel. Well, is it that I can't save money, or is it we can't get jobs because we spoke against Israel, right? And so it's just like people forget. Again, it goes back to luck and risk. You took a risk, and now you got to suffer the consequences. You should have kept your mouth shut. How about that? You want to talk about Donald Trump? Next time you will think about talking about Donald Trump before you talk about Donald Trump. Because now your show got pulled. Well, unless you're a white boy, then everybody petitions and gets your job back. But those are the only ones that get their job back. I wish Morgan Housel would have talked about that. How come Jimmy Kimmel or whoever gets his job back, but all of the other black women who got fired for talking against Donald Trump never got their jobs back? And I was like, oh, well, Kimmel can save, and he compound interest. And well, other people would be able to do that too. They would be able to get a paycheck. But they're not able to get a paycheck because of the political climate, and they're not allowed to speak. There's no freedom of speech. We're seeing it now with all of these lies. Oh, these cities are so criminal, and they're criminals. And is this city a criminal city, or does it just have a big population of black people? Please make more things about race. Um, yeah. So basically, I did learn a lot. I still don't know. I don't think I still really understand and know what stocks and actual investment is. I wouldn't say I know how to define um, certain things. I wouldn't know what stocks or bonds to buy still. So like it doesn't necessarily tell you that, and I don't think that's not the aim of it, right? It's just to help you think about your thought patterns when it comes to money, right? To show you where you're greedy, where you might be hoarding. Um, yeah, so there was a ridiculous amount of number here. Basically, it was saying like you can be um, it was talking about Warren Buffett and Jim Simons and how Buffett still makes more than Simons, but that's because James Simons didn't start as early as Warren Buffett, right? And so there's a number I wanted to read here. Please hold your breath. Um, if James Simons had earned his 66% annual returns for the 70-year span Buffett had built his wealth, yes, 70-year span, Warren Buffett has been saving and investing, um, he would be worth 63 quintillion, 900 quadrillion, 781 trillion, 780 billion, 748,160,000 dollars. That was a real number. Let me say it again. 63 quintillion, 900 quadrillion, 781 trillion, 780 billion, 748,160,000 dollars. We live in a world where that's what somebody could have potentially made if they had been compounding their investment over 70% annually for 7 decades. So this is half an hour, this is one of my longer videos, and it's talking about money. So anyways, I'm gonna end it here. But yeah, really good book for those who want to understand the psychology of money, which I'm really, really into. Oh, it talks about a mindset that could be paranoid and optimistic at the same time is really hard to do, but you have to have a little bit of paranoia. And I was like, I'm always paranoid. I'm always thinking what the other shoe's gonna drop. I'm always thinking what the worst case scenario and how to figure it out. That doesn't really. How come I'm not rich, right? So again, it's just a lot of things to think about. Most of it comes down to um, your mind, right? Controlling your mind, controlling how you think, what your thoughts are, um, knowing the right people. Um, okay, this is where I'll last. He was talking about how he would see when he was younger, he worked at a car or something at a hotel. So he would see a bunch of like people driving like Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Rolls Royces. And he thought, like, the irony is that I rarely ever looked at them, the drivers, right? There's a paradox here. People tend to want wealth to signal to others that they should be liked and admired. But in reality, those other people often bypass admiring you, not because they don't think that wealth is admirable, but because they use your wealth as a benchmark for their own desire to be liked and admired. The letter I wrote after my son was born said, "You might think you want an expensive car, a fancy watch, and a huge house, but I'm telling you don't. What you want is respect and admiration from other people, and you think having expensive stuff will bring it. It almost never does, especially from the people who you want to respect and admire you." That's a lesson I learned as a kid. I didn't have parents to tell me that. Nobody wrote me a letter to tell me that. But observing, seeing pattern recognition, sitting there and watching people, that's what I learned. You have all of these things. I would hear rumors that so and so had a girlfriend and was buying their mistress was driving a different car every day of the week. And to me, I didn't think like, wow, there was that. I just thought like, that's really sad. That's really sad. You want to be so known, so seen, so well respected that you're just throwing money around. So your little side chick gets a different car, gets to drive a different car every week. But your sister, who helped raise you, who shows up for you still, she can't feed her kids. I don't respect that. I don't respect that. Maybe other people fall for your bullshit facade. I don't respect that. I see right through you. I feel bad for you. I feel like you missed out on. So who hurt you? Who hurt you? You learn to buy people's love and affection. You learn to buy respect. You're just surrounded by yes men, people who can't tell you the truth. and you think you're living because you had to buy love. That's so sad. I don't even like fighting for love. If you don't want me, you can go. You want me to fight, beg you to stay? I don't beg no more. I don't chase no more. If you're not in alignment, let it go. A lot of people are afraid of that, right? So, yeah, the psychology of money. I actually would highly recommend it. Um, so the storytelling was my favorite part. It's just I like that they use stories of real everyday people, um, including some wealthy people to talk about that. But that's all I wanted to share. The psychology of money, timeless lessons in wealth, greed, and happiness. So until next time, in solidarity. Have a great week.